So the answer is no. The short answer is no. The reason is Docker and Kubernetes, they provide different functionalities. Their capabilities are different, their purpose is different. So Docker is a platform. And again, one more thing. So Docker, um, people get confused with Docker as a product, Docker as a company, and container as a process which is running on top of it, right? These are three different things. Docker is a company, and Docker has a name of a product. It's a technology also. And on top of that, we run the container. So Docker is a company, as well as Docker is a container engine product. On top of it, we run the containers here. And there is one more product called Docker Swarm, which is a equivalent, which is a competitor for Kubernetes. So Docker Swarm and Kubernetes are equivalent, but not just the Docker alone. And around 2013 or 2014, that's when Docker started evolving, right? I'll just slightly touch. I will not get too deep into the topic of the history and evolution. But see, Docker started around 2013. But initially, they used the LXC product, which is a Linux container. Okay, Linux itself had containerization even in 2007-8 itself. See, if you look at here, in before pre-Docker also, they had C groups, namespaces, chroot. So these are all functionalities which was there even before 2008. In 2000 itself, it was there, and even in the Unix and Linux platform, like we used to have Solaris zones and other product, which is a very similar concept like containers or containerization. And LXC was used by some of the companies, but people did not really understand the functionality benefits. And only certain companies like Google or IBM, they were running the Linux containers within their organization, but they did not sell it as a product, separate product as such, to other organization to consume. So that's where Docker came in, and Docker was launched in 2013. But they started with using the LXC, Linux containers, as a engine to run the container. And after maybe like 1 or 2 years, they started feeling the dependency there. So Docker as a company, they have to wait for LXC product to come up with new features, functionalities, and if there is any security issue or vulnerability, they have to wait until the LXC related functionalities, plugins are getting enabled. So there was a dependency, and they want to completely remove that dependency. And they started using something called lib container, which is a product from themselves. So they started releasing that version from 0.9.0. They replaced LXC with lib container, and they started using the Go libraries and other things, which has option to directly control the kernel features. So in order to access the CPU, memory, and security features, network capabilities, all those things, the lib container started doing it. It replaced LXC. And then they also came up with the idea that it should be an open source, open container initiative, and all the companies can start using this platform and use this runtime for running their application, images, and so on. And when they started as an open source product, a lot of companies started utilizing it. So there was one time when things started little bit shifting towards, um, I would say, Docker's popularity started coming down when it was acquired by a company called Mirantis. Mirantis acquired not the entire Docker business. So what they did is they want to make Docker as a more enterprise product. And Mirantis as a company, they acquired only the Docker enterprise business alone. So Docker inclusion, Docker Inc. is still a separate company. They still provide some level of product like the Docker desktop, the Docker hub, the Docker CLI, and whatever the development experience. It is still with Docker Inc. Docker Inc. is still a separate company. But what they did is they sold only the Docker enterprise platform, like the Docker Swarm, the Docker support business. So all those things, Mirantis took the control, and they started selling it as a product. And that's where some companies started thinking whether they should continue with Docker or whether they should try some other product. And they started trying different product like Podman, and they themselves started using the enhanced version of LXC, and they started trying different things. And in the same time, one more interesting thing happened. So Kubernetes, the community, right? They also thought like, so when Mirantis took over, maybe they might take over even the Docker Hub, Docker Desktop, Docker CLI. So those things which are application developer focused, and the container engine, the open source product, they thought that will also be sold some point of time, and we should not have a dependency on the Docker engine. So what they did is they were using, the Kubernetes was initially using Docker engine as their container engine where they were running the container, and they completely removed that particular layer, and they started making the capabilities of Docker engine directly into the containerd, and some functionalities they added into the Kubernetes layer itself, and they removed the usage of Docker engine around 2019 or around that time, maybe like 4 or 5 years back. They did that. See here, I have already captured it. Okay, so it was November 19 when Mirantis took over. Only these areas, Docker Swarm is a equivalent of Kubernetes, and Docker Enterprise is a separate product. It's an enterprise platform. You have to purchase the subscription and all those things. It's payable. Whereas these ones under the Docker Inc. as a separate company, these are all still available, and it is still managed and maintained by the open source community. Only the enterprise platform was sold. Okay, so the acquisition was only for the enterprise business, whereas the complete open source community is still working on providing the latest Docker desktop version, Docker Hub, Docker CLI. All those things are very much still available. So all these products are still open source. Only the Docker desktop is becoming commercial, and Docker Hub, which is software as a service product, is being made available as a service, and it's not an open source. But you can exactly have the same setup running on your platform without licensing, without commercial aspects, because like Docker engine is still available as a Mobi component. You can still run it as a open source product, and most of the open source technology is still open source, and it is having a quite a lot of community of people supporting it. And Docker as a product is heavily evolving. There are quite a lot of new products that has come. I can just help you understand those list of products and other things. So they are adding many new stuffs. So two things has happened that has given a little bit jerk to Docker as a product. One is the acquisition of the enterprise platform, where companies started thinking otherwise, and especially Kubernetes as a product, they also started thinking of moving away from Docker engine. So these two steps gave a back foot for Docker. Like around 2019 to 2021 or 22, Docker was kind of less talked because of the acquisition. That's what happened for VMware also, right? VMware as a company was acquisition by Broadcom, and the licensing, subscription, commercial things changed, and completely the product also started. The companies and enterprises also started looking for alternatives, and they started promoting Nutanix and other products. Similarly, here most of the other products also started coming up with customer interest, because Kubernetes removed the dependency of Docker engine, and the enterprise platform of Docker was sold to Mirantis. So those two things were the major thing. So Docker has definitely evolved in parallel. So they did not stop, because the community is still actively working. Only the companies, only the enterprises who were consuming it started thinking of alternate options, and they were thinking other things. So Docker definitely popularized container, and because of that company, currently many of the applications are still running on containers, and still they have the OCI standardized container still available. OCI community is still supporting it. You can still develop your application on open containerized runtime platform stack. It is that integration is still available, and you can run it on your environment. So this is how generally it will look like. I will when I run the image as a container, you will get to see how the container stack looks like. So Docker gave the world the containers. Currently, Kubernetes is making them orchestrate, automate, and make them to run at scale. So they work together. They were not competitors, but they were using Docker engine as a product here. But that was kind of removed, and they started running the containers directly on container daemon, container D, and they still use the same runtime runc, and the Linux kernel. All those things are still the same. Docker today, what has happened, and why we should still learn Docker today in AI era. Docker is focusing and investing quite a lot of time and money efforts towards coming up with new products. And recently also, like couple of months back, they launched a product called Docker Sandbox, where you can run AI application without running it on your own operating system. So if you're running a kind of AI application directly on your operating system, sometimes you might tend to give permission to your folders, the file, the applications, whatever you are using, right? AI is a kind of learning platform. It's a kind of LLM, right? It will start learning on what you are doing and all those things. So in order to avoid such implications, so Docker has given you a product called Docker Sandbox. You can run on your own operating system as a kind of separate sandbox environment where you can install whatever tool, Claude or Copilot or Gemini or whatever you want to install, and you can start using it without giving the complete access to your OS or application or folders. You can run it. So Docker Sandbox is a very good product. I will share the demo, and you can also start trying to use it because it's what is needed for many of the AI learning and development. So Docker has a very good product, and I have not listed it here, but there is a separate product I will explain and share how you can use it on your own laptop or desktop, right? And see, Docker desktop is the most popular component where you can install it on Windows, Linux, Mac. I will show you how to install it and how to manage them and how it is interlinked with Amazon ECS and other product. See, Docker Hub is the GitHub kind of thing. So in GitHub, you store the application code. In Docker Hub, you store the entire container image. The entire container related package can be stored in the Docker Hub. It's a centralized repository where the complete image is being secured, scanned, permission driven, and you can also have Docker community verify your images and make it as an official image and all those things. So Docker Hub is a centralized repository. And again, it is a product which is coming from the Docker community. Docker CLI is to connect and manage. So it's the kind of CLI where it can be run on your local machine, and you can connect to a Docker desktop or Docker Hub to load or to pull the image and run it on a Docker desktop. So Docker CLI is an interface through which you do the lot of executions and command. You pull, push, execute things from the Docker CLI from your local desktop or laptop. Docker build is where you build the images. Okay, it's a very good toolkit which you can use. So you don't have to always use that particular tooling. There are a lot of images which are already available as a pre-packaged image from a lot of verified providers officially, like let's say Nginx or like let's say some small Alma Linux or some small application products. It's all pre-packaged, and those images are already scanned, secured, and it's readily available. You don't have to completely build every single thing. You can leverage quite a lot of things from the Docker Hub, and you can just expand what you need using the build kit. I will also show you how the Docker build tool works and the Docker build command can be used. So Docker Scout is a kind of vulnerability scanning tool. It's a AI powered insight tool which is very popular in the current market, but many of the companies are still using tools like Qualys or Tenable Nessus or Wiz. So those are the tools that are heavily used on the vulnerability aspects. Even there are software level vulnerability tools that might be used case to case to to scan the application code and all those things. But for the container image and for the packages and all those things, Docker Scout is a very good product to have a very good secure, optimized, and hardened image, and it can clearly tell you what are the vulnerabilities, gaps that are there in your container image and in your container package. There are other tools that might be very helpful for other areas, like on the OS level and for hardware level, maybe Tenable Nessus, Qualys. Those tools might be very powerful, and maybe Sonar Cube kind of product might be helpful on the application code and application layer. So it's not that one product can fit all the vulnerability requirements. Maybe companies might be using two or three product for different layers, because we are talking about container image here, container package here, but Docker Scout might be a very good product for that, but it might not be a very good product for your hardware vulnerabilities or OS vulnerabilities or application vulnerabilities. Maybe the different product might be helpful, but eventually Docker Scout will eventually evolve. It might start covering a lot of other surrounding things, but it will take some time because this is a tool which is in a evolving phase. And Docker extensions are something which we will easily see how we can extend the Docker desktop capabilities with additional tools, integrations, testing, AI capabilities. So you can expand, and even Docker has a MCP also. The model context protocol. You can connect to different tools. You can integrate with other products that are available in the market. So Docker has AI capabilities which are readily available to connect with different products and tools. So we'll get into the actual product that we are going to discuss shortly. But we definitely need to learn Docker. Docker as a company is still evolving, and quite a lot of applications and products are still running on your container platform in the form of ECS or ACI or AC, Azure Container Apps or Azure Container Service, Google Cloud Run, Google Artifact Registry. So all these are powered using Docker, either Docker Hub or Docker Desktop. So those are the behind technologies. So Amazon ECS is nothing but Docker as a service, Docker container as a service. And Amazon ECR is nothing but Docker image registry as a service. So that's what it is. Okay, so it's like so ACS is actually Azure Container Service was retired. Okay, it's not in the list. That's the reason. But still, they have this Azure Container Instance, Azure Container Apps, and Amazon ECS, Google Cloud Run. So they are all still using the same Docker container as a platform. And without Docker knowledge, it will be little tough to understand that. So if you have the base understanding of Docker container and how it works, then it is easy to understand the ECS and ACA and Google Cloud Run and so on. Okay, so we are going to see how to write a Docker file, how to write the code, how to run it, how to push it to a Docker Hub as a registry, how to pull when it is needed, and how to run it on a particular platforms. All these things are we are going to see both in our local laptop as well as on the container as a service on ECS and ECR. Okay, so you can just create it once and you can run it on ECS platform or your own local laptop or in a different server in your own data center. So you can run it anywhere and you just have to create it only once, and that package, that container image can run anywhere. So that's the advantage. So there is a quite a lot of productivity. There is a quite a lot of benefits. So initially there will be a time delay because of the development and all those things. But once it is developed, packaged and imaged, that image you can take it anywhere to run the product, irrespective of your own data center or different cloud platform. It is portable across anywhere you want to take it away, right? So at a very high level, we are going to install the Docker shortly, and we are going to connect it from your laptop using Docker CLI, and we are going to see how to create an image, push it, pull it, run it as a container, all those things. And the Docker is still alive. Docker is still evolving. Docker has come up with quite a lot of new products even in the current AI era, and Docker will still continue to evolve as good as a kind of enterprise company, and you definitely need to have that knowledge to sustain in the current market. Okay, so hope that helps. Yeah, go ahead.
Stan,
Mm,
Stan, just one question.
yeah.
Stan, if you can go back one
Mm,
slide
sure.
behind,
Yeah, yeah.
just
So one slide or the left one?
you shown a workflow, right? Yeah, this one.
Yeah, yeah.
So now, what I understand, like the earlier, the
Mm.
Docker engine was there. Now, is it not there, or what it is actually?
Okay, see,
Can't
the
find.
Kubernetes as a platform, they completely they don't use Docker engine now, but then Docker engine is still being used by the companies like Amazon for their ECS, Google for their container instance, sorry, Cloud Run and Azure in their container instance. They are using Docker containers still. Okay, but if you are talking about Kubernetes setup, Kubernetes can run even without Docker engine. So it can still run. Okay, you can still use Docker engine along with Kubernetes, but they don't want to see the problem started here because of this acquisition. They got panic. Okay, the community started discussing like, what if they sell the entire Docker engine, because they will have to pay and get the commercial version, right? So they started trying to run the containers on the container daemon itself. Okay, so container D can also run it, but there is some tweaking, some updates that are needed, which Kubernetes as a company, the again that's an open source initiative, right? So they as a company they started doing it, and it can directly run and manage the containers directly on the container D platform. It's not really mandatory to run the containers on the Docker engine, but that was the thing that was used for more than 7 8 years, and then the container D has come up as a separate. See here, this is how the container stack is running on the cloud platform. If you talk about cloud, you have a Linux kernel. On top of that, The execution of the containers happens on the runc. Runc is the command, the runtime environment where you execute the containers, run it, and all those things. Container D is where the life cycle is being managed. Okay, so restarting it or maybe some making some changes, all those things. The container daemon is the container lifecycle management area, but the actual development, the changes, the push, the pull, all those things happen at the Docker layer, and Docker uh, tool provides you that development experience. So, see, in order to have this development experience was taken care by the Kubernetes community itself. So they started developing an alternate on how to run it, how to do the lifecycle management, how to execute the container. So for executing the container, you need runc. For lifecycle management of the container, you need containerd. So those things are managed using these tools. That was the original situation also. And after that, they took over the development experience from the open source community. They started doing their own way of running containers and pushing containers and all those things. So those capabilities started adding into the Kubernetes layer itself. But then Kubernetes is not the platform for running the container. It is just a orchestration, it's a development, it's a kind of automation platform only, not the container platform. So container platform is these two elements. And in fact, it is a holistic one only when you add the Docker engine, because Docker engine is where you get all the APIs, images, network configurations, volumes. So all those things are managed using the Docker daemon. Okay, so Docker D is where you get quite a lot of additional things. And even if you want to do some kind of streaming, or if you want to do some kind of segregation, isolation, and all those things, Docker has a very good option, very good products of features which can help you to manage and maintain your containerized workload in a better way. Okay, so still Docker has a upper hand. And see, they are not competing products. I'm just clearing it again. See, they don't compete with each other. They work together because Kubernetes is needed for the orchestration, and Docker Swarm is also equivalent product which can also be used. But Kubernetes is only the orchestration and automation product or layer. It just manages the environment that is already containerized and running on any platform. It can be containerd or LXC or Docker or Podman. It can manage. Okay, it's just a it's orchestration and automation layer. So it has not replaced anything, or it has not replaced the actual containerization area from Docker. It's still there.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Stan.
Stan,
Mm,
so here,
mm.
for example, we created one image and deployed in Docker.
Okay.
Okay, so in which situation we can use Kubernetes? So
If your containers
suppose if
are
I want
running on
to,
multiple hardware, okay, so if you have only one
uh,
hardware, two hardware, then you can manage. The same like, for example, if you're familiar with virtualization, if you're running two vSphere host or three vSphere host, you can manage them individually. You can log into one hardware and then do the things, and two or three hardware is manageable. If you have 10 hardware, 20 hardware, then you cannot manage
mm,
it. So that's where you have the vCenter, or in Microsoft, you have Virtual Machine Manager, SCVM, System Center Virtual Machine Manager, to manage the virtual machines running on multiple hardware. Similarly, here, if there are many containers running across multiple container host, multiple server hardware, then you need a centralized orchestration control plane. That is where Kubernetes comes in.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
So we can move that images wherever we want, like
Yeah,
it was
so that
suggested.
you can do manually with downtime, with maintenance, all those things you can do
Yeah,
it. But
that
if you want
manual.
to do,
Others,
yeah.
second option is Kubernetes maybe.
Correct. Yeah. So if you want to do it live, if you want to have less downtime, easier orchestration, easiest resource sharing, and quite a lot of additional functionalities, you will get it in Kubernetes. So I'll share one more detailed video. There are quite a lot of
Mhm.
information I've shared. I just thought of touching the surface, but then I ended up going into the depth. But anyways, so that's good. So we have still stuck with the first topic only. Okay. So virtualization
Okay,
versus container. So we are going into the actual Docker architecture now.